Welcome everybody to our study on Revelation, Apocalypse Memed, where we're looking at uh, what we can learn about the genre of apocalypses and what that will teach us when we go through our own apocalypses. And we're going to use memes to understand that and to experience it and to help us kind of make it real for our time now. So a couple of things that I want to announce. I did order some of these. They did come in theoretically. They are at the UPS store. And so I have to go get them on Monday. I do have a couple of y'all that I know have asked for me to give you one, and I've got your name on the list. But I encourage everybody else to order one. Again, it's just this very thin pamphlet, Understanding the Book of Revelation by Rose Publishing. It'll cost you like $3.99. It's just a great resource to have. So I encourage you to get that. And so that's one thing to talk about in announcements wise. The other thing is I encourage all of you that are on Facebook, joining us via Facebook, to share this if you are comfortable doing that, so that maybe some of the folks on your stream can pick it up and start joining us as well. And then I also want to just tell you a couple things that our church is doing on in this coming week, in case you want to join us for those. Every Monday and Friday through the 12th of February, we are offering a spiritual practice online. Tomorrow's spiritual practice will be Musica Divina, so how we encounter God through music. Last Friday's was Visio Divina, so encountering God through the visual arts. And you can pull those up on our Facebook page, so I invite you to be part of that. And then remind you that for worship, we're in the middle of a series called Anything Good. Today, Michael looked at how we respond to God when God's calling out to us in this moment now. And this coming week, the question that we're going to ask is, why do I have to make sacrifices for the benefit of others? So we will look at why that is part of our faith journey. So, okay, just a reminder of how this is taking place. It's taking place in two locations. One is on Facebook Live, and if you're joining us on Facebook Live for between 20 and 30 minutes, I will be doing a lecture portion talking about, we're going to cover chapters 1 through 3 today, and we're really going to focus in on the purpose of the letters to the churches and what they tell us. And so that will take place, like I said, for the first 20 to 30 minutes. Then there is also a webinar option that you can hop in and join us on that. And let me share my screen here real quick and show you, if you want to come in via the webinar, all you need to do is get to Zoom, go to Zoom and put in this webinar ID, which is 936-7995-7360. And that'll allow you to come in via the webinar. I've got folks on the webinar right now, and you can come in right now if you want to and join us, and then you can stay for the question and answer section, which will be, we'll stop by 6 o'clock. But if you've got questions that you would like to put forward, then you can do that in that section. So join us either way. Love to have you, and glad you're here with us today. Okay, so let's dive into the meat of what we're talking about. So today I want to talk about first what an apocalypse is, because it's used. We talk about, well, this is an apocalypse, whatever. It's used often. These are three definitions that you need to understand for understanding what an apocalypse is. So the first one is this idea that an apocalypse is the complete final destruction of the world, as described in the biblical book of Revelation. Now, I did take these definitions from dictionary sites, and I would say destruction is a little bit of an overstatement. I mean, it is, yes, this is an end of days reality that is described in Revelation, but it's not all the way the end of days, because Revelation, as we will see, ends with the new heaven and the new earth, and it takes place here. So it's not a full destruction. It is in many ways a recreation, would be how I would actually describe it. So, but it's this idea that it's the end of days. It's the culmination of God's history, God's plan, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one way to look at an apocalypse. Another way to look at an apocalypse is as an event involving destruction or damage on an awesome or catastrophic scale. So that's why when like when there's a tsunami, we call it an apocalypse event. When there's a tornado that goes through a town, that was like an apocalypse for them. It's really a kind of leveling. It's so dramatic and traumatic of a situation that it kind of reframes how we understand things. Okay. But the other thing that apocalypse is, and actually gives rise to this word, is this genre of prophetic writing that developed in post-exilic Jewish culture. So when they've made their way back from the Babylonian exile and started rebuilding the temple, this type of literature starts to gain ground. It was popular among millennialist early Christians. So these are the folks that are around when Jesus comes, that when we get the new millennium, because of course we had a different calendar for quite a while there, but what we would date now is the turning point into the common era. So it was really popular among early Christians. And apocalypse is a Greek word meaning revelation. This is where the book of Revelation gets its name. That's its name in Greek, is apocalypsis. Apocalypsis is the name of Revelation. It comes from the very first word, a revelation, in the book. And so, which means revelation is an unveiling or unfolding of things not previously known, which could not be known apart from the unveiling. So this is just we call revelation all the time, but I think we think in terms of it being world ending instead of thinking in terms of it being revealing a vision of God, which is what it actually is. It's this revealing of this understanding. So I will also say that this genre of literature was that Revelation, the book that we have here, is not the only apocalypse that we've got. In fact, it's not even the only apocalypse in the Bible. The book of Daniel is an apocalypse. There are many apocalyptic chunks in other works. For instance, in anytime that Paul's dealing with parousia, the kind of coming, second coming, the culmination of the history, that's apocalyptic in nature. Anytime Jesus is making reference to things that are going to totally change, then he's playing with that apocalyptic understanding. And so and there are other books. There's the book of Enoch. There's other books that are non-canonical books out there that are apocalypses. So this is not the only apocalypse we've got. And they all come about in a particular context, in a time when people are under stress, when there's trouble on the horizon. Revelation was written in the midst of Roman persecution. The book of Daniel was written at the time of the Maccabean revolt. All of these are written, and they're products of times of great stress and turmoil and change that people are having to deal with. And that's really what their purpose is to help people claim hope in the midst of some really hard times. So hold on to that as we make our way through Revelation. So characteristics of apocalyptic literature. These are things that tend to pop up over and over and over again. They're pseudonymous, which means that they may or may not be written by the person that they're claimed to be written by. They also oftentimes are handed over as a vision. So whether they claim that they're actually writing this or not is also a question within that as well. They are addressed to the ones who are persecuted and suffering. Their purpose is to motivate faithfulness in times of crisis, so to give people that kind of hope. They use a tremendous amount of symbolism, particularly around numbers and colors. And part of the reason that they do that is to be able to provide resistance under the nose of power. So if you use symbols which have some flexibility in meaning, then you can always claim that you weren't saying something that you were saying. And so it's a tool that those who are being persecuted or oppressed use in order to be able to present their message of hope and resistance to the people that are being persecuted. and it does the heavy lifting of big concepts. So apocalypses deal with big, weighty things. There are usually otherworldly beings and fantastic creatures. There are visions and dreams, which are often interpreted by otherworldly beings. The guides will share with the person who's receiving the vision what they're supposed to mean. There are mystical journeys between heaven and earth. There is a review of history, kind of culmination of history leading all the way up to the present. And then there are secrets revealed of cosmic transformations, that there is change coming, and this is sort of a premonition, a revelation, really, literally, of those changes that are coming. There is a forecast of cosmic catastrophes, because often whenever we have powers that are competing with each other, there's there are big stakes at hand. There are liturgical elements and settings that is just the reality of it being a product of our faith and of worship being at the center of how we claim that faith, and also of worship being a place where we deal with symbolism all the time, and symbolism is very loaded and easily accessible at the same time. It's radically dualistic, which means it's good versus evil, and it's deterministic. The outcome is known. And I will tell you that in the majority of apocalypses, the outcome is good will win. Good will win. It does have a pessimistic reality. It does recognize that things right now are terrible and names that, but it banks on eschatological hope, which means that in the end, all will be well. Okay, so why are we using memes to look at Revelation? Part of it is any time that a product of society is, anytime that there is a message for society, it's going to take place in means that mean something to that society. And right now, social media is very much our way of speaking and communicating with one another. So they work well for that. And let's recognize that social media in general has this kind of power to motivate change, to communicate on a vast scale, and to use all kinds of coded messages and symbolism to be able to do that. For instance, some of you may have heard that people who use TikTok produce TikTok videos, and folks that follow K-pop bands, so Korean pop fans, really messed up a political rally in the fall, and they did so by coded messages through social media. We can also think of the Arab Spring that happened a few years ago, the resistance and the overturn of so many governmental structures, and they use social media to be able to do it. So social media is right now a place where resistance and revolution happens. And so the language that's used in social media oftentimes are memes. And so digital storytelling now is a means in which to convey apocalypse and tell the story, just like books and movies have been, and still are. But the thing about social media is and digital storytelling is it's far more rapidly produced. But then the other thing is that it's a visual medium as well, just like visions are. So memes can carry the same kind of weight that symbolism can. I also like that, in particular, memes are pseudonymous storytelling around cataclysm. So you don't know who put these memes together. 9 times out of 10, they're just anonymously thrown out there. And I love this. Any plans for the weekend? I'll be in my bedroom making no noise and pretending that I don't exist. It's this sort of hidden figure, so to speak, but also dealing with the desire to want to run and hide in the midst of an apocalypse. I also liked that they used Harry Potter in this one, because Harry Potter is an apocalyptic genre, or it participates in the apocalyptic genre. It's big good versus evil, all kinds of fantastical creatures. It really is an apocalyptic set of stories. It's heading towards a world-ending event if someone can't stop it. And so we've had a lot of apocalyptic literature in the past 20 to 30 years that has popped up. And then another thing that is wonderful about memes is that they do provide the hope in the midst of struggle. I don't know about you, but memes have just being able to laugh at them in the midst of 2020 and 2021 has been healing for the soul. So I liked this one. The world is a vast hellscape right now, but remember, the Mandarin word for penguin literally translates to business goose, right? So just finding hope and joy and ways of being in recovery with one another. So okay, I'm going to hop over real quick and talk a little bit about the 7 churches. And then we're going to share some memes around church and talk about what these visions of these 7 churches mean for us in the midst of this. Because the reality is in 2020, the church has gone through a cataclysmic event. The closing of our doors and causing us to then think creatively about how we needed to do ministry has caused us to ask, what is church? What constitutes church? And that's created a crisis of faith across Christianity. And we are still working it out, and we will be working it out for years to come. And different churches are reacting differently in this moment. Some of them are hanging on for all their worth to the old ways of doing things. And then others are adapting rapidly. And within the midst of that, there are these questions of what are we supposed to hold on to and what we don't. So if we're taking an idealist reading, which I said, remember there's four ways to approach Revelation. You can go at it from a historicist view, a preterist view, a futurist view, and an idealist view. And the idealist view is this approach to it that says it has meaning for us in all times and all spaces, because anytime we're going through a difficult time, the pattern of Revelation will be revealed again, and we will find a path through it. So in the midst of this cataclysmic event that we are in with this pandemic, the church has to participate within that. So if we look at each of the 7 churches, I'm just going to kind of quickly go through some of the things that happened to them. And they are, from this approach, from this idealist approach, representative of the ways that the church will react in the midst of cataclysm. Okay, so don't think in particular that this matters for Philadelphia. These are ways that people and churches and groups and that sort of thing can react in the midst of this space. So Ephesus has endurance. They're going to keep on keeping on. They are critical of some new practices that have come about, and they're somewhat praised for that, but they are critiqued for losing their love. So what was at the heart of who they are? And are they losing that in trying to just buckle down and endure? Are they forgetting their great love, and are they forgetting who they are in the midst of this? Smyrna is getting attacked, and their people will literally be imprisoned, but they're encouraged to hold strong. So they're going to go through hard times. That's the recognition. It's going to be tough, but stay faithful. Then Pergamum exists in the heart of the opposing power. So they're right in the shadow of Satan in this particular case. But the struggle that they're dealing with is that they're falling prey to false teachings. So in some ways that very power is seducing them away. And so they need to remember who they're supposed to be listening to in the midst of this. Thyatira has some good works. They're faithful and enduring, but they're following particularly a false prophet, who in this case is Jezebel. And they were encouraged to get rid of her and go back to their work of good works, being faithful and enduring. Sardis looks alive, but is actually dead. And they better wake up quick, because they are headed on the path to death, and they need to respond. Philadelphia, even with little power, they've kept the word and claimed God, and so they're encouraged to just continue to endure, and they will emerge victorious. They've kept to the heart of things, and so that will ultimately hold them out. It'll carry them through. And Laodicea is lukewarm. You think you have all your needs, or just coasting, right? Like just kind of being chill through all of this. And and they're warned that that's going to have to end. They can't just be chill. They're going to have to make a move one direction or another. Jesus is standing at the door and knocking, and so you better open the door. And then all of these close with, if you can hear, listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. So what does that say to us? I mean, I think we see in our time now all the kind of crazy different ways that churches have reacted. And some of them have lined up with politics. And there have been questions as to whether that is true to who they are, or have they sort of sold their soul to power in the midst of this. There are those that have decided they're just going to keep doing the old things, and hopefully that will hold them out. And maybe in their community it will. Maybe that's true to who their community is, and it will work within their community. But maybe what they're doing is refusing to change and recognize the difference of where things are going, and that may put them on a path to death, right? Everybody's tired, exhausted. It's finding a struggle to endure. But there's a great word of encouragement in here for those churches that are enduring. Just hold on, just keep at it. Just remember who you are and hold on to the heart of who you are, and keep moving and keep being the people of God, and we'll get there. We'll get there. So I want to share some of my favorite memes that had to do with church life that have come out in the midst of this. And let me get to those and just kind of reflect. So if we're asking the question, who is the church now? These are some of the ones that have come out. So in conclusion, the Pope says you can worship God at home just fine. Don't need the priest as intercessor in these trying times. And the evangelical Protestants have come out against the priesthood of the believer and say church service is necessary to the faith. Okay, then. So this is one of those memes that points to the question of, do you remember who you are? Have you forgotten? Maybe what was this a point that we needed to give on, or was it not? I mean, I'm not going to answer that question here, but I think this meme raises a good one. And then this question of no thanks, I'm good, quote from the Holy Spirit being rushed back into church buildings. Again, it's a question of are we listening to the Spirit? It's hard to discern that sometimes, but are we staying true to that? The proposed 2020 Charge Conference report, for those of y'all that are Methodists will get this. This is what I think for the church under persecution, there should have been this little piece of grace here, right? Did your church survive the pandemic? Yes or no? Did you personally survive the pandemic? Yes or no? Any pastor answering yes to either or both of the above questions, skip to the signature line. You have completed your 2020 Charge Conference report, right? Just endure right now, endure. And then I like this one. This one wasn't specifically church, but it reminded me of this question of who we are, right? To all the Gen Xers that were Rage Against the Machine fans back in the day, but are now mad at those who are raging against the machine, stay true, posers. It's just this idea of, have you forgotten who you are, with the context shifting, that staying true to your reality sometimes means that reality looks different in a new context, and holding on to those values of who you are may mean that it looks different in a new context. And then this one was a favorite. Somebody saw this and complained that another person's photo was in their spot. Are you focusing on the right things? And then that where 2 or more, but less than 10 are gathered, just to remind us that we can still be the church in the midst of this, that maybe that all of us gathered in one place was not necessarily a necessity, as long as we still had means of gathering and calling the Spirit there. And then to show the difference in having to kind of decide on the fly about what's valuable, pastors in 2010, Facebook is from the devil. 2020, follow our live services, right? Again, with a context shift, what decisions have to be made to maintain church? And then this is really one that was kind of struck at my heart. This new translation of the Bible where Jesus throws the elderly to a plague by Easter to save the money changers seems to be missing the spirit of the original text. I mean, we are going to have some reckoning to do on the other side of this as the church. How did we love God and love neighbor in the midst of this space? So, okay, that was the lecture portion of tonight's gathering. If you have some questions and you would like to hop into the webinar, again, go to zoom.us, type in this webinar ID, 936-7995-7360, to join us for the question and answer portion. If this is all you wanted to just hop in here for the lecture part, that's great. Happy to have you. Next week, read Revelation chapters 4 to 9. We're going to look at who God is in the midst of this time, and haven't we seen this before? We're going to see how these kinds of things pop up over and over and over again, and Revelation is going to deal with that. So, so I hope to join all of you again next week. I hope you all come back. Again, if you want to join us in the webinar, feel free, hop in. We would love to have you. And otherwise, it's been a blessing to be with you this week, and I will see you next week.